Okay, everybody, I think we're going to get started in the interest of time. Again, I'm Maya Yedin. I am Deputy Chief of Staff to Senator Gounardes. I'm going to set the table really quickly for the event. Registrants who provided questions ahead of time will hear their questions answered through the course of the presentations. We appreciate your questions very much. Attendees who have questions along the way, we're going to ask you to put your questions in the chat. And then the panelists and I will go through them and we will get them answered in the course of the evening. We will be recording the webinar and we will be posting the recording on our social media, our website, and we will also have the deck available, so the information will be accessible written if you don't have the ability to take notes. We also have put a caregiver support list in the chat. Please feel free to download that. We will also have that available separately. And you can go to our website, senatorgounardes.nyc. If you have any questions, you can email us at gounardes@nysenate.gov or call our district office Monday through Friday from 10 to 6 at 718-644-3086. That information will be available again at the end. This is the first of a two-part series, and the second event will be held next Monday, the 27th at the same time. And now, without further ado, I will introduce New York State Senator Andrew Gounardes from the 26th District.
Thank you, Maya. Make sure I'm unmuted here. Can everyone hear me? Am I good? Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I could not make it home in time before this Zoom started, so I just pulled over quickly and hopped out of the car. And I really just want to, welcome you all to tonight's webinar. The needs of our senior community and our elder adult population continue to grow and grow and grow. In the last decade, the population of seniors in New York City has grown by more than 500,000 people. That's a 53% increase. And more increasingly, is on top of that, so many of our families are living in multi-generational households or little villages, on the same block, in the same neighborhood. And we all have a responsibility to try to take care of each other. I saw this firsthand with my own grandparents and how my mother had to struggle to really navigate a lot of complex challenges with my grandparents, as they were getting older and as they were getting sick. And so tonight's panel is really part of a two-part series that we wanted to offer to the community to kind of help answer some of these questions, help educate people about what things they should start thinking about from now. We can legislate all the policy ideas in the world, but nothing really can, prepare someone for having to go through these challenges step by step with their loved ones in their lives. And so that's really what tonight is all about. I want to thank Judy. I want to thank Cathy. I want to thank Zoe. I want to thank everyone who helped us put this together. Tonight's panel is going to focus on some of the legal issues you have to face, some of the financial choices you're going to have to make, as well as some of the healthcare related choices you may have to make. Our second panel, which will be next week, is really going to focus on specific issues for those who have long-term care needs or who are facing different elements of dementia, which is a whole separate set of issues and complications that folks are going to have to start thinking about and grappling with. So please make sure that you join us for next week's presentation as well. And to the extent you feel information is useful, please share it as well with other people in your lives who you think would benefit from hearing this conversation. I'm going to stop there because we have a great discussion ahead of us, and I'm going to turn things over to Judy to get us started.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to have everyone with me. And thank you, Zoe and Cathy, for rounding out the session today. So today's session, as Senator Gounardes said, is we hope to give you a little bit of a roadmap. We're starting with legal and financial because when I look through the statistics, 58% of caregivers say the legal and financial issues are the biggest stressor in trying to navigate this complex process. Other issues are balancing work life, the pressure of finding the right kind of help and the right kind of care. Lack of sleep is one of the things that makes it very, very difficult. So some of you are caring for a spouse, some are caring for a parent. Most of you, the majority of caregivers are caring for parents, but then there are, adult children, the grandchildren. And I was always surprised, I don't know about Zoe, but when I would meet, often there were these dutiful beautiful nieces and nephews that would show up and be the caregivers. So it's a range, but it's usually within the family circle that the caregiving occurs. Some of you will spend over $7,000 a year in financial outlays and out-of-pocket costs. So it's a serious business, both personally, time investment, family investment, financial investment. And so we're hoping that we begin to give you some insights in how to approach this caregiving role. I will say we're going to throw a lot at you. So please be patient with yourself and with us, and don't expect to get it all in. And that's why when Maya said you'll be able to get the PowerPoint deck as well as see the recording, because you'll miss some of it and you won't be able to take it all in. And I find sometimes you get stuck on an issue and you say, well, I didn't really understand that. And you stop listening to the 10 more slides that just passed you by. So be patient and we'll try to get it all in, but you may need to revisit because there's a lot here. So I'll start with legal and financial. I'm a lawyer, so it's my area. So if you want to advance the slide, Nathaniel. Okay, so my agenda is to really give you the tools. What are the legal tools that you need that will make it a little bit easier for you to get through this process? And we find that if you have these basic tools, some of the entry-level things that you have to do at the beginning of the caregiving role will be so much easier. So the first one is the power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, a living will, which is less crucial but much comforting, why you need a will, a trust, and then I'll turn it over to Zoe to talk about Medicaid updates. So next slide, please. So the power of attorney. New York takes the power of attorney very, very seriously. In fact, it has a statutory form that if you use it, you'll not only have a good power of attorney, you'll have the whole weight of the New York state law behind you. So when some banks tries to say, we're not taking this power of attorney, but it's a New York statutory form, they have to. So what does a power of attorney do? And sometimes it scares someone because the word power isn't in the title by accident. It's powerful. You, by signing a power of attorney, or your loved one who is beginning to experience the need for help, and maybe even the beginning levels of dementia, appoints an agent. And that agent can do a variety of things, from pay bills to invest in assets, to file taxes, to submit insurance, all the legal and financial things that you do every day. Handle your banking, handle your real estate, your home. That person can step into your shoes on the day that, God forbid, you can no longer do it for yourself. But my mother was 90. She said, I can still do it, but I don't want to do it. I want you to do it. So it could be someone who chooses to turn the reins over, or someone who must because of lack of capacity. The person that you appoint, you have to have complete trust in. And that's what makes it so difficult and complex and responsible. But if you're doing it when you're competent, if your loved one is doing it when they still have control, then it's a gift to themselves for being able to pick and choose who it is, and a gift to you because you're entrusted to be able to really help them. Next slide. So I would strongly advise, if you're a New Yorker, that you do the New York standardized form. If you're a snowbirder, you're down in Florida, you should also do the Florida form, because if you have an issue that happens in Florida, or you have an apartment in Florida, you should have that form as well. But the New York statutory form should be given full faith and credit no matter where you are. But, banks are weird. So, and real estate law is sometimes a little bit rigid. So New York's power of attorney is very complete. But you have to have the capacity. You have to be able to understand. You have to, and you might say, well, my mother's already far gone. The doctor said she has dementia. There are windows of opportunity where she still may be able to sign if she still recognizes you and she recognizes that she can consent. It's a contract. That's what a power of attorney is. I make a contract with you to say you can take over my affairs when and if needed. So if your mother can still consent, she may still have sufficient capacity. So don't let that idea that the diagnosis has occurred, I'm done. Not necessarily. There's these windows of opportunity, or they call it windows of lucidity. Like in the morning, the person I'm caring for is really sharp. By 4 o'clock, not so good. So if the power of attorney is done in the morning when they still understand and they can agree and consent, the power of attorney can still be executed. It needs to be signed and it needs to be dated, and there must be a notary present. So you really do have to have a certain level of capacity, but it can be the be-all and end-all to allow you to be able to handle just about anything. There are some questions about downloading. I don't know if you want to interrupt in the or with Nathan, but I don't think I'm going to stop. Anyway, if you find you've picked the wrong person, say, am I done for? Is it permanent? No, a power of attorney is revocable. It can be changed. It can be revoked. You notify your agent in writing and said, do over, I'm doing it again. And you can do that. Next slide, Nathan. So you can designate an agent, and if indeed there are things you want to limit, you can. It's not necessarily it's a global document, and it can apply to just about anything. But you can pick and choose some of the powers that the power of attorney can have, or some of the areas that they can and cannot do. But we suggest if you're going to do it, you do it full blown. Why? If you're going to trust someone, you don't know what you're going to face entering the later years, especially if there's levels of incapacity, dementia, physical needs. So you might want to make sure they have the broadest of authorities so that they're there to be able to help you. But you can limit it in some ways. The other thing is, some people say, I only have one person. I help them stretch their thinking to make sure there's a successor. Nobody's invincible. Someone could be perfectly capable today, and tomorrow they're the ones have some level of incapacity. So she always should have a backup agent in addition to the primary one. The power of attorney is powerful in that it's effective on the day that it's signed, and it continues even after you become incapacitated. So if I have signed a power of attorney already, I think I'm pretty capable, and I've appointed an agent, but it doesn't mean I lose my ability to make decisions. I just have this backup plan, which is my son can take over when and if I'm unable. But it does stop when you stop. You can't be the agent of a deceased person. So when you die, the power of attorney dies with you. So don't be tricked to think your power of attorney is going to be able to continue to act after that. It's only a lifetime benefit. Why do we do it? Because if there's no one to make decisions for you, no one to handle your legal and financial, the only solution is courts. And the courts is a guardianship. And anyone who's watched those recent movies, guardianships, if you think power of attorney is complex, a guardianship with a court as a partner to your life affairs is even more complicated. Next slide. So the power of attorney, thanks to our legislature, thanks, Andrew, we had it revised in 2021, and it's been much more simplified, thank goodness. It does require, it no longer has to have a separate form for gifting, the gifting power, and that's a very important power if you're going to be using the power of attorney to move money around for Medicaid purposes, when Zoe talks about that. But it allows you to make gifts within the power of attorney. It also has some signing requirements. One witness, you do need witnesses because it's such a serious document. Not only do you need notaries, you do need witnesses. So if they're wanting to assure that this power of attorney, this contract that you're signing was really done with great seriousness and thoughtfulness, and that there are witnesses to say that you really consented. If a power of attorney is not accepted by a financial institution, a bank, a title company, or real estate, in a real estate transaction, they have to give a good reason why they're not accepting it. And if indeed a bank or a financial institution refuses to accept it, they have a certain time limit that they have to accept or reject the power of attorney. It used to be, it would go on for ages. If indeed there's not a valid reason and it's found not to have a valid reason, those institutions could face damages and attorney fees. We've found that once they're alerted to this, some of the banks who used to just arbitrarily say, I'm not accepting your power of attorney, you have to do my form, have now learned that they will accept the New York State power of attorney. So the new power of attorney will not revoke older power of attorneys that were executed properly. So if you said, well, I did one a very long time ago, Judy, and this new law, do I have to do it over again? No, you do not. The old power of attorneys, if they were done under this proper procedure, they must be accepted, and they get the same authority as any New York State power of attorney. So the power of attorney is really the baseline, especially if your loved one is facing dementia, to allow you to be able to step into their shoes and really make decisions and get the care they need. Next. Companion or the sister to the power of attorney is the healthcare proxy. In some states, they call it a healthcare power of attorney. We call it the healthcare proxy. If you see the document, it looks much more simple than a power of attorney. It's actually a one-pager, and it can be found on the New York State Department of Health website. So it's intended to be easily accessible. But it is the lead document in making medical decisions. And I remember the first time I invoked my healthcare proxy. I had fallen, and I was taken to, at the time, was a Victory Memorial Hospital, which now is closed and for good reason. I was there and they said, oh, I think you might need knee surgery. And I go, whoa, I'm not having knee surgery at Victory Memorial Hospital. Well, my power of attorney was my then 21-year-old son. So it was quite a while ago. And he knew he had it, and it gave him, I was the mouthpiece because I was stuck in the emergency room, cubicle, but because he had this power in his hand, they listened to him, and I told him what to do, and I said, no surgery for me, and get me out of here, blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't life and death, but boy, did it give me a sense of control when I ordinarily might have been out of control. So a healthcare proxy could be for very normal or mundane or day-to-day healthcare decision-making or end-of-life decision-making. It's a wonderful tool to be able to have, again, a spokesperson who knows you and cares about you and wants to make sure you're taken care of, will be able to be your voice if you cannot be your voice. And it becomes again, remember my own mother who said, oh, they're throwing too many things at me. Judy, you sort it out and then explain it to me. Because often doctors don't have the patience to sort it out. They maybe talk in doctor talk or legal talk or shortened talk. And I could extract the information and translate for my mother, but because I had this power of attorney in my hand, they would be forced to acknowledge that I had the authority to speak for her. A power of attorney has to be triggered. It's just because you've done it, it will not be triggered until you're deemed to either have incapacity or for the agent to say, I want my power of attorney to take over. So remember that it does have to be triggered. And sometimes with a person with dementia, they don't want to give up control. So it can be tricky to use it. But often I found the medical providers do want to talk to the healthcare agent, especially when the elder or the person impaired can't make decisions easily for themselves. So if they won't trigger it, a doctor can trigger it and determine that the person does not understand the seriousness of the decision that needs to be made or unable to make the decision, and then the agent can step up. Next slide, please. Next slide, Nathan. Okay, just one more thing on the power of attorney, on the healthcare proxy. The healthcare proxy does not need a notary, just 2 witnesses, and a copy is as good as an original. And I encourage you, if you have done a healthcare proxy, and I think not only for the persons you're caring for, but you should have it too, should be filed within your medical record. you should make sure that your treating physician, or now that we all have my charts and all of those interconnected medical charts, that your healthcare proxy should be listed in there so that in case there's an emergency, you're not getting a call. Who is it? Where's my piece of paper? I used to get calls all the time and have to fax, when faxes were still in use, fax over the power of a healthcare proxy because they couldn't find it. The child couldn't find it. I have another long story, but I don't think I have time for it. But just know that now use the My Chart kind of benefit and get your healthcare proxy sorted in there. Living will is probably many people know about it and they think that's a primary document. It frankly is not. It doesn't appoint an agent at all. All it states is what healthcare measures you want to be taken if you're seriously ill or have no hope of recovery. So a living will applies to a very narrow strip of your existence, your healthcare existence. It's only when you're at the end of your life, there's no hope of recovery, there's treatment that you should not benefit from, then the instructions in living wills come up. It's a very wonderful tool to give your healthcare agent, because if you can think of the responsibility that you have to make decisions for another, wouldn't it be nice to have an instruction manual? Wouldn't it be nice to have something written so you know exactly what someone wants? So a living will is a useful tool, not the be all and end all, but I think it gives great comfort, and it's a gift you can give your agents so they know exactly what you need and not be in flux or indecisive about what should be happening. There was one question here about, does the power of attorney mean that they take over? It doesn't mean they take over. If you're still capable, you can still make decisions for yourself, but they're an assistant, an adjunct, or for a time when you cannot. So it's active on the day that you sign it, but we have had people who say, I'm not giving my power of attorney I'm going to sign it, but I'm going to hold on to it. I'm not giving it to them yet. I'll tell them where it is. So if you have that need to control, you should hold on to your power of attorney. But I would think long and hard. If you're not going to trust the person you want to give that power of attorney to, maybe they're the wrong person. It's tricky business, but it is active when signed. Okay, next slide. Next slide, Nathan, please. Okay. So if you don't do a power of attorney, if all hope is lost, capacity is no longer there, what happens? What happens is everything's in stalemate, and the only solution is for the person or persons who's trying to provide care for you and cannot, they would have to go to court. And under the guardianship law, there's a very good guardianship law called Article 81 that intends to allow this relinquishing of your legal rights to another only if you are in danger to yourself or others, or don't understand the risk that you're putting yourself, the health and safety risk you're putting yourself in by not making good decisions. It's a very serious step because your legal rights are being taken away and vested in this guardian. There's been much abuse around guardianship. So again, if you can get the person you're caring for to do the documents now while they have capacity, rather than the time, expense, embarrassment, public display of your inability to act, I think it's well worth avoiding guardianship. Next slide, please. So the other tool that you might want to have in your bag of preparation is a will. So what is a will? A will is a legal document that says, this is how I want my stuff, my estate, my possessions, my things distributed at your death. And you might say, we're talking about caregivers. We're talking about, taking care of someone in life. Why is a will so important? It is not important for the caregiving aspect, but it does kind of straighten out what happens with your finances. As Zoe's going to explain, much of the strain on caregivers is, will I have enough money? Is there enough money? How do I finance the care? And if the caregiver's stepping up to the plate, they may want the reassurance that it'll be fairly distributed after they die. It just seems to take tension away when everything's clear and outlined in a will. So I strongly advise that part of the planning be a will. I also think for your loved one, they might feel comforted to have that all laid out as well. Next slide. If you don't do a will, the world doesn't end. Guess what? New York State has a will written just for you. You might say, what? New York has a will written for me? Yes, it's called intestacy, and it states that your assets are given out according to bloodlines, according to the family tree. So for example, if the caregiver child is the one who's been at your side day by day by day, and your other child you haven't seen in 20 years, the state doesn't recognize that difference. They give equally between the two children. So if there are people that mean very much to you, if you have a will, you can give out direct how your assets should be designated. You can give specific bequests to the local senior center, to your church, to a charity. The law won't do that automatically. You get to pick your executor. Who will be your executor? Who will be the guardian of your minor children or a disabled child? Rather than all of your children's trying to figure it out who should step up to the plate. So it names all these specifics. But without a will, the estate goes according to bloodlines. And just to know, your surviving spouse, if there is no will only get $50,000 in half of your estate. The other half goes to your children. And it makes for some grouchy spouses. They say, wait a minute, I don't get it all. If you don't write a will, you don't get it all. But this division goes according to the state law, and the state law says a spouse only gets one half of the estate. Now you might say, but I have my spouse as a beneficiary on everything. And well, that would override. That's kind of a mini will, but it's not a will. But people just skip things. They forget, they change, they get a new CD and they forget to put the beneficiary on it. So the will takes in all assets that do not have a beneficiary designation on it. So it's very important. It's very comforting to the elder as well as to you to know that, you won't have a mess. The only thing about a will, no matter what, the most beautiful will with a wax seal still must go through probate. And probate court in our county can be a little messy, right, Zoe? Can be a little messy. It can take 6 months to a year, and it can cost lots of legal fees. So if you want to avoid that, your alternative is maybe a trust. So next slide, please. Just to let you know, on a living will, a last will and testament, it has to be signed. It has to be signed with 2 witnesses. And every time you sign a new will, it revokes the old will. So wills are revocable and changeable. In fact, we think that you should go back every 5 years and take a look. A new grandchild may be added, some change in relationship. A child may become disabled and they can't receive the money themselves because they're on Medicaid. You might need a trust. A grandchild may be born but has a disability. So there's many reasons why you should be looking at your will and updating it on a regular basis. New marriage, a divorce, a new person coming in your life, some change in circumstances. Just one warning, please, if you have your will and it's stapled, don't remove the staples. Don't write on your will. Don't make some handwritten changes because that may invalidate your will. And always keep it in a safe place. And one safe place that we probably don't recommend is a safe deposit box. You might say, oh, that's the safest place I could think of. But it gets sealed at your death, and then it may require a probate proceeding just to get the will out of the safe deposit box. So invest in a safe place in your home, not a safe deposit box, please. If a will is disappeared and you only have a copy, the courts presume a disappearing will, a non-existent will, has been destroyed by you. And if your heirs try to probate a copy of a will, it's going to be quite difficult. So keep that will in a safe place. And next slide. Trusts. So you must be hearing a lot about trusts, and I only have 3 more minutes before my time's up. Trusts are the new wave, and we recommend trusts because of the complication of probate. They can be revocable or irrevocable. Zoe's going to talk about the irrevocable type because that is what is used to protect assets. But any kind of trust will avoid probate and eliminate the need to go to court. A revocable trust is merely for that. It avoids probate. It can be very descriptive. It can have the same elements of a will, but the only difference is because you signed it in life and you said, this is what I want now, while your eyes were wide open, and you've assigned a trustee to take over you that role, it doesn't need to go through a court system. Irrevocable is said, I not only lay out all my desires and wishes and direction, but I do it while I'm alive and I irrevocably give it to my trustee. So I can't be the trustee of my irrevocable trust. And you might say, oh, that doesn't sound very good. That's why it works for probate avoidance, but it also works for Medicaid planning or asset protection or claims against creditors, because if you've given it away into the hands of a trustee, they can't come and ask you to spend your money. There are other reasons to do trust, minimizing estate taxes, but the main reason is avoiding probate and irrevocably to asset protect for Medicaid or other creditor purposes. If you are going to do a trust, you really shouldn't do it by buying it on LegalZoom. It's a very serious and important document, and you really should get the help of a competent assistant, and that would be an attorney. And we recommend that, again, you pick your trustee with the same care you would pick a power of attorney, and have both a primary trustee and a secondary. Okay, next slide. So the Medicaid trust is what we would recommend for asset protection. Again, it has no probate. Please remember, you can't serve as the trustee. That's why having successor trustee, it operates just like a will and protects against government benefits. Trusts also have some very good tax plannings. It can give you when you put an asset in a trust, even though you've given it away irrevocably, you still have some incidence and control over it a little bit. Like you may have the use of your home. You may have some control to substitute one asset for another. And because of that, you may be able to also get a step up in basis for capital gains protection purposes. So trusts have some wonderful elements. But I'm going to turn it over now. I believe that's the end of my slides, but let me just check. Yes. So I encourage you to plan now, do those advanced directives now, select agents with care and someone you can trust. It will make sure you get the care you need. It will achieve your estate goals. It will give your family peace of mind, please. And it will determine if you'll be able to apply for Medicaid. So I'll turn it over now to the next speaker. And I don't see any other questions in my question box. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. That was great. Hi, everybody. My name is Zoe Freireich. I also work at Grimaldi Young Law Group, and I can tell you that Judy knows her stuff for sure. She's taught me a lot of what I know. And so I'm going to go through for you the legal and financial considerations for long-term care planning. Next slide, please. So my agenda, we're going to talk about, first of all, planning for your long-term care needs. Then I'm going to explain to you the Medicare-Medicaid divide and how they're different. Then I'm going to talk about long-term care insurance. I'm going to also talk about the Medicaid program in New York State. And then we'll just do some quick examples on how you become eligible for these programs. So that would include your income and asset eligibility, exempt assets and transfers, and role of lifetime trusts. So let's get to it. Next slide, please. So first of all, what is long-term care? And excuse me if you know this, but I'm going to try and be very basic so that we're all on the same page here. And oftentimes people are not really sure what long-term care is, especially if they've never dealt with this before. So long-term care, it's different from medical care. That's what we all know about healthcare, medical care. This is different. This is what you would consider unskilled care. So this is when somebody needs an aid, when they need assistance with, and it's a term of art here, activities of daily living. People will call them ADLs. And so what are those? Common ones are mobility, so help with walking, with transferring, which is getting in and out of bed, getting up from a chair, etc. Getting dressed, if you need help dressing, toileting, using the bathroom, right? Bathing yourself, or even feeding yourself. Those are real common ADLs that people who get long-term care need assistance to do. So that's what we're talking about. And just keep in mind that although the whole system that I'm going to describe to you is supposed to be seamless, it's not always. So sometimes people need assistance before they're at the point when they need help with these types of ADLs. So you have to imagine that even though, you know, your elder planner, your lawyer may tell you, wrap it all up and get it all secured, you may also be paying, like Judy talked about before, $7,000 towards long-term care out of pocket. You may need that. So keep that in mind as we talk. Remember that every single plan is very unique and everybody has to look at their own circumstances and how these would fit in with their own life. Okay, and so the newest requirements for getting long-term care now for Medicaid eligibility is that you need to need assistance with 3 of these. And if you have a diagnosis of some type of dementia, you need help with 2 of these. Okay, next slide, please. So what is long-term care planning? Okay, so long-term planning is a 2-pronged complex process. The best case scenario is that you do it early and you do it with the right professionals who are experienced in this to get you through it. So you want to get access to proper community and medical services, and you want to also protect your assets in case something catastrophic happens. Next slide, please. So the first little bit that we'll sort of talk about background is the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. And so these are 2 different programs. Medicare is something that you get of right once you reach a certain age. And it's very judgy and sort of talks how our country sort of figures it out. And it's sort of how you can remember it in your mind. Medicare is based on your age. Medicaid, aid instead of care, is for people who have a need for health care, long-term care, and they cannot afford it. Medicare doesn't matter about your income. Medicaid does. So Medicare, people get when they are 65 years old. We had a question prior to the presentation where somebody said, at what point should you apply for Medicare? So for Medicare, you're eligible when you're 65 years old, but you have to remember there's Part A, B, C, D, etc. So Part A, you get when you're 65, that's hospital coverage. It also covers a little bit of long-term care. So what we're looking at on this slide is it covers hospital and a short-term rehab at some sort of like a rehab center type of thing. If you fall down, you hurt yourself, you have to learn how to walk again, you're going to be in a rehab center, and Medicare will cover those costs for up to 100 days, sometimes less, but up to 100 days, not more than that. It also covers hospice, okay? Then you have Part B, I'll just go real quickly, is your doctor visits. Part D is drugs, your prescriptions. And so B and D, you must have some sort of credible care in place, whether it's through your job if you're still working, your spouse's job, or you have to apply for it through Medicare. Otherwise, if you don't have some sort of credible care and you don't apply for it, because let's say I don't need any prescriptions yet, you're going to get a penalty for the rest of your life. And so you must do it when you're eligible, whether or not you use it. Okay. So Medicare Part A does not cover long-term care, home care services, or custodial care at a nursing home, or drugs. Next slide, please. Then if you don't have, if you have long-term care insurance, great. A while back, the insurance companies were offering this, and a lot of people who are, you know, in their 70s and such now have long-term care insurance, or some people do, but it started getting very expensive, and so a lot of people canceled their coverage because they didn't need it yet, and people who are younger, there's fewer and fewer options for it. And so long-term care insurance, what we're looking at is a policy to cover an aid, right? There's something called an elimination period. You can get a rider to cover the elimination period, but the elimination period means I need long-term care. Hey, insurance company, could you get my long-term care policy started? They say, well, yes, and after 90 days, it will kick in. So you have to do 90 days on your own, okay? There's also a daily payment limit. So typically a cost, if it's 24 hours a day, that's what we look to for like the golden standard so that you can cover all of your care. And typically people don't always need it right away, but you can. If something catastrophic happens, you may need full care right away. But it costs about $500 a day at least out of pocket, right? So if you have a long-term care insurance policy, you want to make sure that you have at least $500 a day coverage. There's also a lifetime payment limit typically. It'll be, so for 5 years right now, if you were going to get 24 hours of care at $500 a day, that's $900,000 for 5 years. So if you look at the lifetime payment limit in your long-term care insurance policy, that's 5 years of 24 hours a day in today's money, okay? A lot of times there's also a time period limit. So they say, we'll cover you for either $900,000 or 5 years, whichever comes first, for example. Some of the older policies only cover 3 years, and that has to do with something called a look back period for Medicaid. That used to be 3 years, now it's 5 years. So they'll last somewhere within that time typically. Sometimes people have something called an inflation rider, which makes it so that, just like I said, today's dollars, you're looking at $500 a day. Some policies will increase in value with inflation so that they cover more. I've seen some old policies that only cover $150 a day because there was no inflation rider, and now the person can use it. $150 a day is about 3 or 4 hours worth of care. It's not much, okay? And then I have also seen some people can opt for an elimination period rider. So there's no elimination period. So you don't have to wait until your insurance kicks in. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, before you switch to the next slide, somebody asked in the questions before we started, if there was a type of life insurance that will pay for long-term care and or pays death benefits. So the best thing to do is speak to an insurance agent to get all of your options. But I have spoken to an insurance agent, and yes, for people who are who don't have long-term care insurance, you can also get a whole life insurance policy. So you must be healthy because otherwise you're not going to get life insurance. It's a whole life policy, and it gives you the option. If you get the rider for long-term care insurance, you have to get it at the time that you apply for the insurance. You can use the money either to pay at death, to cash in during your lifetime, or to pay for your long-term care. So those policies are out there. I would suggest that you talk to an insurance agent about that. Next slide, please. So what is Medicaid? So we went over what is Medicare. So what is Medicaid? So Medicaid, if you think of it as an insurance company, but a public one, it is the payer of last resort. And I put in italics here, if you are eligible. So if you don't have any insurance and you are eligible, they will pay for your care. So what is the eligibility requirements for Medicaid? They look at you with two different sets of evaluations. One is a medical need. Do you need them? Because, for example, if you just want somebody to help out around the house, that's not going to be enough. You really need help with 2 to 3 activities of daily living. That's what we talked about first. You really need an assistant, really. You need assistance in your living. So that's one set of circumstances. Then they look at your finances. And there's 2 different ways that they look at your finances. They look at your resources. What do you have available to pay for your care? Before you come to us, you need to use everything that you have that you can spend. And they also look at your income, because remember, Medicaid it's supposed to be for people with low means, with low income and low assets. And so in order to become eligible, if you don't have low income or low assets, you come to an elder lawyer and we help you. And we can do that. So the sort of principle behind what Medicaid says is you can spend all your money, we don't care, you just can't hide it from us. So if you keep that in your mind, it sort of goes forward with how you can become eligible, even if right now you're not, or if your loved one is not. Next slide, please. So there's 2 types of Medicaid for long-term care. Okay, so you can get care in your home. That's called community-based Medicaid. And you can also get your nursing home or institutional-based Medicaid paid for through Medicaid. Most people look to get community-based Medicaid because they want somebody to take care of them while they're living in their home. Okay, so right now in New York State, there's something called a look-back period. Remember we talked about Medicaid says you can spend your money, but you can't hide it from us? So what they do when you apply for Medicaid is they look and they say, let me see all your bank statements. Let me see what kind of money you have. Let me look at your resources. And look, don't have much money. They say, that's great, but we want to make sure you didn't hide anything from us. So if you gave away your money right before you apply, they're going to look for a certain period backwards to say, did you give anything away? Because you're allowed to spend it, but you can't give it away. And that time period that they look back is called the look back period. Did you give anything away? So right now for community-based Medicaid, there's no look back period. If you show up, you say, here, hold my stuff. Hi, Medicaid. Can I get some care? Resource-wise, you can be eligible. That's fine. However, the law changed in New York that the look-back period is about to be 30 months. They changed the law a while ago in New York, and it needed to be approved by the federal government. And so that's a process, as you can imagine, and they're finally getting around to it. And so far, it has not yet come into effect, but pretty soon, having somebody help you in your home or your loved one in their home, it's going to have a 30-month look back, 2.5 years. So in order to, if you have too many resources, too much at your fingertips to be able to pay for your own care that Medicaid thinks is too much, if you don't have something to spend that money on and you give it away, and you could give it to an irrevocable Medicaid asset protection trust, you have to do that 2.5 years before you apply for Medicaid, okay? Right now, no look back for community, but pretty soon it will be 2.5 years, okay? The way that the community Medicaid program works is it's managed care, just like an HMO, but it's an MLTC. So instead of a health management, like we all sort of know those terms, this is you apply through, you get an agency that works for what's called an MLTC, Managed Long-Term Care Company, who then can help you. Anyway, and then for institution-based Medicaid, this is for when you're in a nursing home. And the look-back period for nursing home care is 5 years. So if you need nursing home or your loved one needs nursing home, and you've created a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust where you put most of your resources in, then after 5 years, which is what we want the golden standard to be 5 years, then you're okay. None of those assets can be touched. It's just anything that you've given away. And by given away, I mean you put it into a Medicaid asset protection trust. That's a 5-year look back period. If you did give something away within that look back period, Medicaid takes the value of that resource and they say they divide it by the amount of months, the cost of care from 1 month, which let's say $15,000, you gave away a house for $300,000. So they're going to look at the cost of the house, $300,000 divided by 15,000, and they come up with 20 months. So you have to pay for 20 months before they start paying. That's how the penalty period works, okay? There's certain transfers that are exempt. We're going to go more into this in a little while. So let's say I'm married. I have my $300,000 house that I want to give away because I don't want it in my name. I can give it to my spouse, right? I give it to him. It's not considered a transfer. Medicaid does not care. I can give it also to my disabled child. If I have a disabled child, I can give my house to my disabled child. Medicaid does not care. They're okay with those types of.
Next slide.
Maya, you have your hand up. Did you have a question?
There were 2 questions in the Q&A, so I don't think they're popping up in your chat, and I just didn't know if you might want to touch on them now, or if you wanted to just wait until the end of your presentation. The first one is there a specific company or plan to purchase long-term health, purchase long-term care insurance? We have heard that there are some long-term care policies that also provide life insurance. That's the first question.
Oh, that one, yeah, I spoke about that. There are types that do that, but you should talk to an insurance agent that specializes in whole life insurance policies and also long-term care. But yeah, they do have those. Yeah.
And then the second one is, what if you begin New York community-based home care before it changes to a 30-month look-back period? Will you then be subject to the new look-back later?
No, you're grandfathered in. Okay. So when we talked about Medicaid earlier, we said we looked at the financial part, right? So there were assets and there is income. Assets that are not included, so it's not all assets that they look at, right? Because they only look at resources. And I very carefully said resources because you have assets and then you have some of them are resources. So what is not a resource? So your primary residence is not a resource. They're not going to make you use up your home or sell it or kick you out on the street just to give you care. It doesn't make sense, right? However, if your primary residence is a mansion, that's another story. So if you are living with your spouse, they don't count your house is not, your primary residence does not make you ineligible. But if you do not have a spouse living with you and your primary residence is worth more than $1,097,000, and I have heard that next year it's going to go down to $1 million, which a lot of our houses are worth more than that. So if you do not have a spouse living in that house is too expensive according to Medicaid. You could downsize and use the rest of the money that you cash out for your own care before they give you any money. And so your primary residence does not make you ineligible, okay? Also, if you have a minor or a disabled child living in your house with you, you're also they're not going to count your house, okay? If you have prepaid non-refundable funeral agreement and some burial funds, those are also not considered a resource. It's an asset, you own it, but it's not a resource that Medicaid will make you use before they give you any care. If you have retirement funds, your IRAs, your 401k, if those are in payout status, meaning that you're getting your yearly or your monthly required minimum distributions, or if it's some sort of a Roth IRA, you can put it into distribution status. Medicaid does not count that as a resource that they will go after and make you spend all of before they give you care. However, that payout that comes out, they consider income. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But they do not count like the bulk of it as a resource that you have to spend in New York. In other states, they do, not New York. If you're getting Holocaust reparation funds, that is not considered a resource. And you can have one car that they do not consider a resource. If you have more than one car, they will consider it a resource. They'll make you sell it or something to pay for your own care. Next slide, please. So let's say you need care now and you have too many resources. What can you give away that Medicaid is okay with, right? You're not allowed to hide, which means you're not allowed to give away, but what can you give away? What don't they mind? So I can give everything I own to my spouse and they are fine with that, okay? They can also, if you are under the age of 65, there's something called a supplemental needs trust. That's called a first party self-settled, which you can do that if you're under the age of 65. And I suggest that you talk to an elder or a trust and estates lawyer to get you one of those trusts if that's what you need. Just to spoil the ending, you can't leave that your first beneficiary of that trust has to pay back whatever Medicaid gave you during your lifetime. So when you pass away, if there's anything left, it gets paid back to Medicaid. You can also give, you can transfer to a blind or a disabled child, or trust for a sole benefit of the child who's blind or disabled, okay? You can transfer to a trust, somebody else, where they have a trust that is established for their sole benefit of a disabled person under the age of 65. You can also give your resources to that trust. And there's also specifically for your primary residence, if let's say I'm not living with my husband, but I'm living with my child who's taking care of me, or you're living with your mother or your father who doesn't have the spouse living with them, and you're taking care of them, and you've been doing that for at least a couple of years, your parent can transfer the house to you as the caregiver child, caretaker child, and that Medicaid is okay with. But mind you, when your parent gives you their house, they're also going to give you whatever capital gains taxes that they would owe on selling their house. You're going to get that burden, just as a little something to keep in mind. Trust, you don't have that issue. Okay, next slide, please. So planning with trust. Judy talked about revocable trust, irrevocable trust. So just to recap, a revocable trust is not something you want to do for Medicaid planning necessarily. You can be your own trustee, great, but it's not asset protection. And so your assets are fully attachable by Medicaid. Somebody says, how is the $1 million equity determined in a house? So it could be an appraisal. If you look right now, New York City, for example, has gotten much more accurate with what the tax department says your home is worth. So there's that. There's different ways. At what point does application go through for community Medicaid while working with an attorney? So I think what you're saying is when you're working with an attorney, how long does it take for it to be approved? So once the application is submitted to Medicaid, it depends, but it can take up to 3 months, sometimes 4 months. It can take a little bit to get approved, sometimes sooner, not always. Okay, that's all I see. Okay. So planning with trust, again, you avoid probate.
Zoe, there's one more
Yeah.
in the Q&A that I don't know if you want to just touch on real quick. If
I
a
don't-
primary residence is worth more than the $1,097,000, say 1.75 million, will the resource come under the 1.75? Meaning, like, will it be the difference?
No, it's the whole house. No, it's not the difference. And similarly with the look back period, like let's say you gave something away 4.5 years ago, it's not like they take off a month each time. No, it's they take the whole thing within the entire look back period. There's no, yeah.
So they used to say that you could take a home equity loan and
Mhm.
bring the equity value down, but then what do you do with the money that you just got? So
Right.
they expect you, I guess, to take that home equity loan, spend the money, and then
Right, spend the money. Because remember, you can't give it away, but you can spend it. So let's say you want to apply, like if you're close, like let's say it's $1.2 million and your roof is falling off and your stoop is falling off and you need to now put in all sorts of safety equipment because you're having so much trouble walking, right? Maybe you need one of those chair lifts. You can spend your money, get the home equity loan, reduce the equity in your home, like Judy just said, and then you spend your money fixing up your home. That's okay. That's perfectly reasonable. You're allowed to do that. Okay. The other thing is, if you know that you need money to live on, that's more than whatever Medicaid allows you to have, which is very little when you apply, so long as you spend it all and not give it away, it's okay. But you do have to spend whatever you don't
You
want
could do a
to use on
prepaid
healthcare.
funeral, you could
Mhm.
buy an annuity and then turn resources into an income stream,
Yeah,
but
all these
it's
things.
never simple.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing we were talking about is the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, right? So that is considered giving away. You can give away to, people, but you can also give away to an irrevocable trust. People prefer giving to a trust because your assets are protected from creditors, not just Medicaid, but other creditors against you. Also, if you have an irrevocable asset protection trust, we talked about giving away your home to your caretaker child. If you put it in an irrevocable trust and it's still in the irrevocable trust when you pass away, it gets a step up in basis, which basically wipes out the capital gains tax burden for your beneficiaries. Whereas if you give it to a person, doesn't happen. So that's it's very attractive for an irrevocable trust. Also, having an irrevocable trust is very creative, right? You can name who your trustees are. You have a plan in it that's almost like a will substitute that says how you give away your things during your life and at your death. Also, if your loved ones, your trustees, your trusted people, have issues with creditors, whether that is even in a divorce or if they get into a car accident or who knows what, your money is safeguarded in the irrevocable trust, whereas if you gave it to that person, it's not safeguarded. But with an irrevocable trust, because you're giving it away, you're really giving it away. You can't be your own trustee. Trustees are the people that manage your assets for you, so you cannot manage your assets. It's supposed to be permanent. There's a lot of machinations you can go through to get rid of your irrevocable trust, but it's expensive and it takes a while and it's not always such a great option. So think of it as permanent. Like we said, it's credit protection, it's Medicaid planning. And if you don't have long-term care insurance, it's really, if you don't have that much money to pay for your own care, and we went over the cost of care is very high, you kind of have to. So that's the trust. And then there's also, we talked about we touched upon talking about a trust for a disabled person. We talked about like a first party supplemental needs trust for somebody 65 years of age or less. There's those types of trusts too. And these are trusts that an elder lawyer can do for you, a trust and estates lawyers can do for you as well. So next slide, please. So how much can you have in your income? So for community-based Medicaid, this is somebody coming into your home. It says 1 month look back, but there's really not a look back period actually, but you give them 1 month's worth of your asset statements. And so right now, your income is allowed to be $1,800 a month. Okay. And if you're a 2-person household where both of you are trying to get Medicaid to come to your home, that the income level, the monthly income is $2,433. Okay. And for a married couple, where only 1 person is applying, the monthly income for the household is allowed to be $3,948. And then if you look in the next column, the Medicaid resources. So these are the assets that they think you can use on your own care, not all your assets, right? So that's going to be for 1 person, $32,396. For both people applying, it's going to be $43,781. And a married couple, The well spouse, the spouse who is not getting Medicaid, can have up to 157,920 resource assets in resource. Okay, next slide. So for institutional-based Medicaid, if it's an individual person going into the nursing home receives all of your income except for $50. Okay, and you're allowed to have $32,396 in resources. If you are the community spouse, that's the well spouse, the one who's not in nursing home, their income is allowed to be $3,948. And again, they can have up to $157,920 in resources, not assets, resources. Okay, next slide, please. So a lot of people say, well, what are we talking about? I have too much income. Like, what am I doing? Why are we even talking about Medicaid? I can never get it. That's not true. So elder lawyers can help you secret away, protect your resources that Medicaid will say that you have to use before they will help you. So you can put those resources in an irrevocable trust, a Medicaid asset protection trust. And then for income, there's pooled trust that we can help you apply for. So how does this work? So we'll look at a couple of different scenarios. So this person in this example has monthly Social Security of $1,752. They also have a pension for $150 a month. And they also have an IRA where they get $1,200 a year, but monthly it's $100 a month. So their total income is $2,002 a month. So Medicaid lets you deduct your health insurance. So on your Medicare, they had to pay some money, and then you have the income allowance. That's they deduct the $1,800, and then they also let you have $20 disregard. They just say, okay, $20 is enough that you can have. So the total deductions for this person is $1,930. So they're only over the income level by $72. So what do? So this is for home care, right? Because you're saying that $1,800 is what Medicaid allows you to have, not the $50. So if you're getting home care and you're $72 too much, you just pay for your own care with the $72. You pay that first and Medicaid covers the rest. Okay, so it doesn't make you ineligible. It's just that you have to pay a little bit towards your care. Next slide. So in this one, somebody makes more money. So their Social Security is $2,500 a month. Their pension is $4,000 a month. And so their income is $6,500 a month. That's much more than $1,800, right? So again, you have your supplemental health insurance is $150 a month. You can deduct that. Medicaid allows you to have $1,800. You can deduct that. And then they have disregard. Okay, $20 extra we don't care about. So now you have a surplus of $4,530 a month. Well, that's a lot. So what you do with that is you then deposit that money into something called a pooled trust. Now, if you remember just a moment ago, we talked about supplemental needs trusts that are for disabled people. And so Medicaid does not look at money that's in a supplemental needs trust as really belonging to that disabled person. It doesn't make them ineligible. That's why you can give your money to that disabled person's trust. Well, pooled trusts are like a big supplemental needs trust for everybody who puts their money into it. And it's pooled because it's all sorts of people put their money in there. Everybody gets a ledger that says how much they put in, and they can spend that money on everything that Medicaid does not cover for them, everything Social Security does not cover for them. And as long as you spend it all, just like in those other supplemental needs trusts that pay back the government when you pass away, if you don't have anything left in your ledger when you pass away, that's it. You just got to use it all. Anything you do leave in there, yeah, you lose it. But this is the way that you take care of excess income if you need Medicaid. And you don't have to set this up beforehand. In our practice, what we do is we'll apply for community Medicaid for somebody and we'll say, hey, Medicaid, look, we realize this person is over income, but if you approve them, we're going to have them apply to this pooled trust company. And when they approve them, that's what we do. We apply for the pooled trust company. And so the being over income is not an issue. Okay, so don't ever have somebody say, well, you make too much, you can't get Medicaid. That is not true. Okay, next slide, please. So pooled income trust, you can use it with community Medicaid. You cannot use it when you're in a nursing home. With a nursing home, any income you have over $50 gets paid to the nursing home, period. Okay. So with a community Medicaid, that's somebody coming to your house to give you assistance with 2 or 3 ADLs, right? Activities of daily living. Your excess income is deposited into the pooled trust on a monthly basis. So if you get, your required minimum distribution from your IRA payout, it'll have to be paid on a monthly basis. That's okay. The pooled trust is run by charities and other groups. A lot of times there's social workers involved that will help you use all your money. They want you to use all your money. Like I said, you have your own ledger with you put your money in, you take your money out. Sometimes they'll even contact you to say, hey, you have too much money in here, start using it. We always advise people spend that money first before your $1,800 that you're allowed to keep in your own bank account every month. First, spend all that pooled trust money so that it doesn't get lost if you pass away. And like I said, sometimes you get social services with these companies. It's not such a bad thing. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. So questions. Let me see if I think I went over all. Oh, somebody asked this question. Okay, I'm going to just ask these because I didn't know where these went in my presentation. Somebody says, with a life estate for a 96-year-old parent, can you get a loan or like a reverse mortgage or anything like that if there's a life estate? A life estate, for those of you who don't know, it's a type of deed where the parent retains the lifetime right to live in their house, and the rest of it goes to somebody that they give it to. So yes, you can, but it can be difficult. If there are certain brokers that do reverse mortgages that are more reputable than others, so you have to be careful about that. Then there was another question about, my brother has recently moved in with me. He is 70 and his name is on the house deed. What are the financial implications? I'm not quite sure what this question was getting at. But if he needs Medicaid, he has to, if his name is on his deed and it's no longer his primary residence, then that is a resource. So if he keeps his house as his primary residence, it may not be a resource that Medicaid can attach. But if he has really permanently moved out, it's no longer his primary residence, then that can be used as a resource that Medicaid may say, sell it and use it for your own cost of your care. Okay. It is my understanding one can change the trustees in an irrevocable trust. Is this accurate?
I answered these.
Oh,
I answered those. So
okay.
yeah, I
Thanks,
answered
Judy.
them all.
Okay, and now we have Cathy Gormley, who's awesome, and she's going to talk about supports for caregivers. Thank you all so much, and thank you.
Hi, I'm Cathy Gormley. I'm the Director of Programs at Heights and Hills. And Zoe and Judy thoroughly went over the financial and legal aspects of caregiving. And I know there are probably a lot of questions still on that front because it can be confusing. But I'm here to talk about the supports for caregivers. Next slide. So just basically, so we're all on the same page, a caregiver is someone who provides physical, emotional, or practical support to another person who needs help due to age, illness, disability, or other challenges. And I put that out there because a lot of caregivers don't even identify as a caregiver. You're just a daughter, a niece, a friend taking care of someone that you love in your life, but you are a caregiver and there are supports out there for you. Next slide. There are lots of impacts of caregiving. These are the big ones. There's an emotional stress, there's physical strain. As Zoe and Judith pointed out, there's financial strain, and often it's socially isolated. You're doing what you're doing in your day-to-day life and nobody knows what you're struggling with. and we're here to support you. Next slide. Thanks. And the big message I want you to walk away with tonight is you are not alone. NYC Aging funds Heights and Hills to provide caregiver services, and you should know that if you don't live in an area that we cover, we'll point you in the right direction. If you know somebody in the Bronx that's caring for someone, every community in New York City is covered by a caregiver program. But there's also the AARP, Care in Kind, the Family Caregiving Alliance. There are lots of resources out there for you. Next slide. Our services aim to reduce strain, the caregiver strain that comes with the role by connecting caregivers with the vital resources that are available, providing emotional support, offering practical relief, and helping in some cases with financial needs. Next slide. So our services are for quote unquote family caregivers or for informal caregivers. It's not for paid caregivers, the aides who are valiant workers in our society, but we call informal caregivers anyone caring for someone over the age of 60, anyone who's 60 and above caring for someone 18 and above with a disability, someone 60 and above caring for a child that's in their kinship care, or anybody caring for someone with early onset dementia who is under the age of 60. If you live in our catchment area or the care receiver, the person you're caring for, lives in our catchment area, we can provide care to you. Next slide. So when I say catchment area, that's just a social service term to say an area we cover. So our caregiver program covers pretty much the northern half of Brooklyn. So that's from Flatbush all the way up to the top of Brooklyn. Next slide. We don't check your income or your assets. No insurance is required for the services we provide. We don't check anyone's immigration status, and all of our services are free to you. Next slide. So we focus on you, the caregiver, exclusively. You're the person we're helping. We work with the older adult or whoever the care receiver is, but you are our client and our main focus is on you. You'd have a one-on-one connection with a social worker. You can get information, assistance, counseling. We offer support groups, educational workshops on a variety of things like Medicare and Medicare, how to find home care services for you. We've had ones on the more touchy-feely things like how to get on the same page as caregivers. And all of that information is on our website. We can, which I'll describe later, we can provide short-term respite and short-term assistance with supplies that aren't covered by another resource like insurance. So often incontinence supplies are not covered, or some durable medical equipment is not covered, and we can come in and help you with that cost. Next slide. So short-term respite is meant as a break for the caregiver to give you time in your day to take care of yourself, to go have coffee with a friend, to go to a medical appointment. We can put that in place for 1 or 2 days a week for about 3 months to give you space and time to care for yourself, but also do some of the things that Judy and Zoe spoke about and plan for the future of caregiving, because it gets more intense over time. It doesn't ease over time. Next slide. The short-term supplies, the short-term help with supplies I was speaking of, we can purchase incontinence supplies, nutritional supports, durable medical equipment. But we know that the financial implications of caregiving that Judy mentioned are significant, so we're here to help you with those things. Next slide. And I kind of rushed through that, but so if you have questions, you can always reach out to me. Here's my phone number, or send an email to info@heightsandhills.org. And I'll just touch on the 2 questions that were sent in ahead before the webinar that I can cover. One is how to get families with competing agendas and different ideas about what's good care to get on the same page. That's a really tough problem, but where I start out is finding the commonality, and I come at it knowing that everybody involved loves and cares for the person we're talking about. And if we start there, then we get to more commonalities. Sometimes the rifts in families can be big and difficult and need some more help. And that's what our social workers are trained to do. So if you need help navigating those discussions, you can feel free to call us. And then how do you negotiate the public assistant maze for family members? Systems are often not made to be user-friendly, and our social workers are trained to help you with that. We can explain how to connect to Medicaid, to SNAP, and if we don't know how to do it, we'll find the people that can do it for you. I hope that answered the questions, and I honestly was not checking on the chat during my whole discussion.
I have one for you from the Q&A, which is
Sure.
just about your catchment area. And does that apply to the caregiver or the person being cared for?
Either one can live in our catchment area, and then we can serve you.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate everybody coming, our panelists and our interpreters, and all of our attendees. Thank you very much. I just put in the chat the different ways that you can get in touch with our office if you didn't have an opportunity to write it down in the beginning. And as a reminder, we will be back here next week with session 2. So I hope you can all join us then. And on behalf of the Senator, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you,
night.
everybody. Good night.
Good night. Have a good one.